it's wild to like seeing this movie, and it's a film of gay actors playing gay characters, which is still groundbreaking. My question, I guess, is: do you think there's a power in gay actors playing gay characters, and was the vibe on the set different compared to? I know both of you are actors. I'm sure you're used to being like the only gay person or one of few, you know. So I want to know if the vibe was different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's significant, if only to acknowledge the fact that here are 9 openly gay actors, all of whom are thriving and successful in our own ways and integrated in our lives, and when you juxtapose that to the sacrifices that the original cast had to engage and confront in their decision to take on these roles, I think it's a real momentous opportunity to see how far we've come. And in terms of the vibe, like, yes, very different. Like, we were living for each other on that set. It was super fun. I mean, we've a lot of us have known each other from before we did the play together, but then we had these months to get to know one another and sort of make each other laugh. And so by the time we got together to film the movie, it was just a really joyful experience. And there was a kind of freedom and a kind of humor that existed because of who we all are that probably wouldn't have existed if there were, straight actors peppered among us. But that, who's to say? There's a lot of people in our business who are straight but not narrow. So I feel like there was a kind of freedom though.
The vibe on the set was different because of it, but I honestly don't know. In this case, everyone was well suited to their role, but I have no doubt that there are plenty of gay roles that straight actors could play just as well, if not better, than depending on the kind of gay actor that was available at the time. But on a personal level, I'd never worked with so many other gay actors at the same time. And yeah, it was meaningful to me. It was an experience unlike any that I'd had. It's hard to even lay your finger on, but there was a feeling of belonging that I didn't know I was missing, that I felt. And it was really nice to have that fulfilled.
I just feel the same way. I mean, it was sort of like this unspoken camaraderie that we had from the beginning. And I'm sure part of that was because we were gay, but there was just a respect and a generosity and a kindness and empathy and just sort of like a wonderful feeling from the beginning. And I think part of that is certainly because we are gay, but it really was about the work. And then, you're just doing this play and everybody around you happens to be gay. But I nod, I think, because I'm used to being the only gay person in the room.
Exactly.
And so it is a little disarming and wonderful, and it worked out as well as it possibly could have.
I think it totally makes a difference. Do I think that heterosexual people are incapable of playing straight characters? I don't believe that, because then I'd have to believe that my gay behind can't play straight characters, and I've proven that rumor wrong, right? But here's the thing. There are nuances that we understand. There's math that we don't have to calculate because we've lived those experiences. So the 9 of us, there are just these magical moments that maybe would have been looked over that we know not to look over. So I think ultimately it just adds to the depth of the story. And it also, the visual of us 9 out gay men, that matters.
There are so many moments that are just full of nuance. And Robin is correct. I won't say Robin's right, because that sounds like Robin Wright. But the reason that I think it's really important and empowering that 9 gay men played these 9 gay men is because the way that you hold yourself among other gay men, people you feel safe with, is different than playing someone who is experiencing that.
I think it definitely informs the work in a completely different way, and I am proud of that, as with regards to this project. But I also think I dream of a day where it's notable when gay actors play straight parts. Which doesn't, I think that would be a remarkable achievement at all. Or that we don't even talk about someone's sexual. We just talk about them as actors.
So I first watched the film in college when I was still in the closet, and I know that kind of changed how I thought about myself and with shame, and it started a lot of different conversations within me. I wanted to know if there was any specific moment when you first watched the film or saw the play that just really resonated with you.
There are a lot of them. I think
Yeah.
so many of them happen in those arias that a lot of the characters have at the, the last act of the film, and where you see, the structure of the story is so smart because it's so funny and it moves so quickly at the beginning that you're sort of just lured into these characters' world, and then when it turns and you get some insight into who these men are, based on past experiences, I found those really heartbreaking. And every night I had a lump in my throat for Bernard in particular, especially if you're thinking about 1968 and the fact that this took place in the spring of 1968, just a couple months before Stonewall, and probably a month or two after Dr. King's assassination. So what that character must have been going through, and then what he has to face in that room as well, was particularly heartbreaking to me, every performance we did.
In this play, my character tells the guy that he is in love with, I love you. And each night there was a build to that for me. And to be honest, during the play, sometimes I would play it as if I had never said it to him before. And sometimes I would say it as, even though you're doing what you're doing to me, please remember that I still love you. And those, the minutia between those is small and maybe unnoticeable, but to be able to, moderate between those and try to find what's right, or are they both right? And then to do them both, for a film, it's such a personal thing for a guy who's so pent up to be able to say I love you to another man in the presence of 7 other gay men. Really took a lot of courage, even though he was among brethren.
I mean, one of the pleasures of the Broadway run and then the film for me was just getting to sit and listen. I think that's part of Cowboy. He is just sitting and listening and enjoying being in the company of other gay men. And that was so special in 1968. Those spaces really were sacred. And yeah, it's impossible to not be moved by. One thing that comes to mind is Hank when he talks about, falling for a man at a train station despite being married. Like the connection that my fellow actors brought, the hearts that they brought to these words was intensely moving and felt like testimonies. And often after, when we would go out and out the stage door and meet fans back there and Schubert Alley and such, like people would share their testimony about their experience. And so there was just this, I don't know, really important aspect of testimony to the whole thing.
I think the whole idea of friends getting together to celebrate a birthday party and something goes off the rails has happened to most people. Like I grew up in New York. Well, I grew up in Texas, and then I came to New York when I was 18. So I've been to many a birthday party that went off the rails. There was nothing revolutionary about that, but it was really revelatory how they all come back together or choose their friendships in the end. And that is, I think, the most important thing, because this story is going around the world to places where it is still 1968 to gay people. And to know, how do you find a connection and how do you hold on to that even through the rough times that every relationship, gay, straight, black, white, then or now, have.
I think 2 moments in the film that were really powerful to me, having worked on the play, these weren't in the play, is when Michael's character is sitting on the subway and we see a woman sort of look at him with disapproval, someone he doesn't know. And then also when neighbors walk by and look in and you see him, everybody immediately put their guard up. And I think those things are very important to understand as an audience member today, to understand that we can't take for granted that we have this comfort and this freedom to live our lives authentically, but there was so much judgment from the outside world that you always were aware of, hyper aware of.
We're so fortunate to live in a time where my reaction has been, I've been able to kind of ignore some of the more subtle ways in which there's still homophobia or whatever. You know, you see it sometimes, but it's just not as overt, and you can get by and not deal with it consciously as much. And going through this, I realized there's a lot inside me still that I have not let myself acknowledge completely, and that's a process or whatever. But as good as things are now, and as different as they are from 50 years ago when this story took place, the residual stuff is still there, and it still has an effect on one. I believe it does on me.
Well, like you, Taylor, that was my first exposure to it when I was in college, which would have been about definitely before you were born, 1982. And I was just coming out, and I mean, I'll be frank with you, it frightened me. We weren't that far away from that time, but I was also, I went to an arts college, and so it wasn't, coming out was not a big deal. It happened like that. But then this document of a time existed that was shocking to me, and it didn't bear any resemblance to the life that I thought I was going to live. So it always kind of hovered around here, like, what is that? Where does that live in me? Does that live in me? It was mostly like provocative in the sense of I was asking myself questions about it. Have we evolved from that? Does that linger somewhere? And that's been my relationship with it, up until today, asking those kinds of questions about the material.
What are the lessons for the later generations of gay men? Because obviously we're all a little bit later than the original film. But Zach, what did you learn from the original film or play, or what do you hope younger viewers might take from the film they're watching today?
Well, I think there's something universal about what these men are striving for, searching for, longing for in their lives. There's an acceptance both within themselves and in the world around them that I think they're all lacking. And I don't think that's an experience that's unique to gay men, especially in this day and age. I think that's an experience that a lot of people can relate to. This idea of finding love and realizing that meaningful love can never come from outside of yourself. It has to come from within. I think all of these guys are on some sort of place in that spectrum, right? So hopefully people, and especially young people, will watch this film no matter how they identify, right? This is a story told from the perspective of gay men, but I don't think it's limited to them or their experience. So hopefully that resonates in a larger way now that we're able to share the movie with so many people around the world.
I hope people really understand that we do live in a different world for the most part, and we're the beneficiaries of a lot of decisions, legal decisions, Supreme Court decisions that have allowed us a more comfortable life, and that always hangs in the balance. That's tenuous.
Yeah, I hope that they recognize this as our history, and I hope they recognize the importance of that history, and I hope that they recognize that we can't go back to that history, and that is what we're currently being threatened with. So, let's be aware of that responsibility we have. We didn't get a choice in it, but we got to carry it out if we want to live our best possible lives.
I think that it's important, even though this story takes place at a particular time in history, that we understand and remember the cost of oppression and of not having a sense of self-worth, caving to oppression, and what it can do to us as human beings, what we're capable of doing when we surrender to that, when we surrender to oppression. And so I think it's important to push back, to demand, to stand tall, because I think the cost is enormous.